What's going on? It is Brandon Ewing, and I am here, Lake County Unfiltered, Lake County Media Group. Super excited this evening to be with you all again on our 4-part series on fatherhood. And so share this live video. Remember, any of those individuals that share, we are giving away this Fathers Matters hat. So we are randomly picking from those that share it. So like this video, share this video. We got an important topic this evening. But before we get started with that, I just want to go over some of the disclosures. So, we got to get that out of the way. And starting off, the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and host and do not reflect the views of Lake County Media Group, Fathers Matters, or its affiliates. This program is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, or professional advice. Viewer discretion is advised as sensitive topics may be discussed. And then I want to shout out our sponsors. So this episode of Lake County Unfiltered is proudly sponsored by the Community Works, an organization dedicated to building stronger families and uplifting communities. Through their support, we're able to spark important conversations, advocate for fathers, and create meaningful change. Thank you to the Community Works for helping us make a lasting impact. And this is part of our collaboration between Lake County Media Group and Fathers Matters. We're coming together to highlight important stories, advocate for fatherhood, and inspire positive change in our community. Together, we're amplifying voices and making a difference for families everywhere. And tonight we have a super dope guest. I'm super excited for this. We get tons of inboxes on Fathers Matters. Men are going through stuff, right? And fathers are going through stuff. And a lot of times that may involve the courts. And so we have ReneaRose, and then I want to make sure it's Amen. Amen. So we got ReneaRose Amen, who will be with us this evening. She is an attorney, and a little bit about her. Earned her bachelor's degree from Columbia College of Missouri, her Juris Doctorate from John Marshall Law School in Chicago, and joined the Illinois Bar in 2016. Originally from New York, so your transplant here in Illinois as we're recording from. She now practices law in Lake County and the surrounding areas, focusing on criminal defense, civil rights litigation, family law, with an emphasis on fathers' rights. As an adjunct professor at Columbia College of Missouri, she teaches business law, and her legal expertise has earned her recognition as a Super Lawyers Rising Star in both 2023 and 2024. So we welcome you to the pod this evening.
Thank you for having me.
No, super excited to be able to talk with you. So tell the people just a little bit about yourself. Give them a little bit of background.
Okay, so my name is actually ReneaRose Amen.
Okay.
I am married. I live here in Lake County. I settled here after getting out of the Navy. I have 4 children. One is a bonus child, so that directly impacts why I do what I do. Mm-hmm. But I do, as you said, criminal defense and family law with the focus on fathers' rights, because I believe that there's a disparity between dads and moms in the court process, but we'll get to that.
That's why knowing your background and even some of the individuals that you've been able to help, I thought that was an important perspective for us to hear from. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So can you maybe share what inspired you to pursue a career in law?
Well, I always say I've always wanted to be an attorney, even when I was little. But I just did not want to go to college. And I thought, I'm just going to do it. And so I was in the Navy, and I got out, and I thought, I got to do something. And then my husband was like, follow your dream. And so we did it, and it was hard.
Trust me, yeah.
Oh, it was hard, but we did it.
That's awesome. And so, with that, like, growing up in New York, how did that maybe shape your perspective and drive? Was there anything from your childhood that kind of led you? Say you always knew. So what was it about law that always attracted you?
So here's the thing. I really would call myself like a mutt. Like, I'm not from any one particular place. I was actually born in Louisiana. Okay. My dad raised me in New York. I moved around a lot because I was in the military. But now I'm claiming this is home.
Okay.
So
we love it.
But I think in me growing up, my father went through a lot with trying to be a dad. So after seeing him go through it, and he didn't quit, he kept going. And after seeing him go through it and then see my husband go through it, I just thought, there are some good men who really want to be fathers. Some are even, better fathers than mothers are mothers. And I know that's, that's hard, right?
Yeah, but say it.
But it's the truth. And I thought, you know what? I said, God, if you let me pass the bar, I will help. And that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Kind of, now you talk about that. So, I mean, you say your father had to fight to be a father. You talk about experiences that your spouse also had. But why advocating and focusing on father's rights as a family law attorney?
So here's the thing. I actually don't like family law, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, I just kind of fell into it because I was, trying to help my husband before I became an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, as I said, there's such a disparity, right? And most fathers, well, let me back up. Children need two parents, right? That's why two people had to make them. So two people should be responsible,
I love
right?
that. Yes.
And so with that being said, I looked at dads, and I looked at my husband when we were going through it. I was in law school. Like I said, we were broke. And I thought, oh my God, I have to pay all this money to an attorney, and they're not even listening to him. And I said, I practice criminal defense. That's my main bread and butter. So what I can do is I can help fathers by charging a lower rate and helping them out with making payments and things of that nature, because they don't have money. Because they're paying child support.
It's expensive.
Yeah, I know, right? If they're trying to take care of their home, they're paying child support. They're, then little Johnny still needs a coat, and they want you to pay 50% of that, and he still has medical and dental and all of those things. And so I thought, let me help dads, because moms have a lot of help. They have so many resources. Men do not.
And why do you think that is? Like, is it society? Is it men? Stereotypes, right? But why do you think that a lot of times, and we've heard it, and I've heard it even in the messages on our page, where mothers will get supported, and even where some of the fathers who follow our page and participate in company events, they're telling me, look, I got 100% custody. I have my kids all the time. I don't qualify for benefits, and I'm not receiving child support, right, from the mother. So why do you think that is?
I think part of it is stereotypes. I think that part of it is a way to break down the family unit. And I believe that there is just this, let me go back. So the men we look at as providers, right?
Right.
So they go out, they make the money, they shoot the meat, or however they do it, they provide. The women are supposed to nurture and take care of the home. Not every woman is nurturing. Like, I don't think I'm a nurturer. I think I'm probably a provider. My husband's the nurturer. And we have to be okay with saying, you know what? Dad can handle it because he's dad, and he's not going to hurt them. We have to also be comfortable with saying, Mom might not be the best, but together we can do it.
Because you need both. And
need both.
I love what you said. Is that otherwise it wouldn't take two to make one. Yeah, I see that oftentimes, and we talk about that a lot on the page. And there's even so what would you say to individuals that are proponents of the 50-50 movement, where men would automatically gain in a divorce, separation, or if they are unmarried, rights to the child 50% of the time?
So as it stands right now in Illinois, we are heading down that road, right? But it's 365 days in a year, so no one's ever going to have complete 50-50, right? I am all for it, because I have seen and I have represented people where moms have hurt children. And guys, I'm not like beating up on moms. Like, I'm really not. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. But I've seen where like moms have abused children and things like that when dad was available and wanted them. And they just thought, well, mom's a better fit because she's mom. So we have to, be comfortable with making some changes and making some hard analogies and trying to fix it, right? No one wants to say, mom is better than dad, or dad is better than mom. But there are some situations where that's the truth.
Yeah, no. And we hear, to your point, we hear the horror stories. And that's always what's, I give credit, to my mother, is I lived with her. My parents weren't together, right? My dad had remarried. My mother had her partner. But when I got to middle school, she said, you know what? I think it's time for you to go and live with your father. And so from the time I was in 6th grade till the time I graduated high school, I lived with my father. So I had the first half of my life, right, of adolescence, I was with my mother. And the second half, I was with my father. And I always thought that was a unique perspective. And, mom was super involved, saw her on the weekends. It was the opposite of what you normally see. But I think that was important and I valued it. But I also know that my mom took stuff for it, people who criticize that choice and that decision. But she's like, you're becoming a man and I want you to learn how to do that from a man. And what better man to teach you that than your father. And so I always appreciate her for making that sacrifice, because I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I'm sure it was not.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to fathers who feel the legal system is stacked against them?
Okay. The advice that I would give is keep fighting. But here's the issue with the keep fighting. Usually they can't afford it, right? And they're so frustrated. So I always try to tell my clients, when you hire me, don't worry. But if you're going to worry, then you probably don't need me. You probably should go hire somebody else. Now, I'm not like I'm God, but I'm going to take care of you, right? And there is nothing you as dad can do that I'm not going to be able to do in that courtroom. So with that being said, I would just tell them, don't quit, don't stop, no matter how frustrated it is, no matter how you feel that it's one-sided and you didn't get to tell your story will come. It will come. It won't come to the end when we go to trial, but it will come, right? And you have to be able to be in for the long haul.
Is there, and I know you can't talk about everything, but is there a particular case or situation or something that, stuck with you, either a success story or a horror story? Because we hear both of those.
Well, I will say I've had some good success stories with fathers raising their children and getting them. I will tell you that the majority of that is in Cook County. In Lake County, they're not quite ready yet to say that dad is a better fit. And one of the examples is, so a couple years ago, I represented this man, and mom was just giving him a hard time for no reason. She didn't want to work. She was living off the child support. And I'm always like, how much child support are you getting? Because, that's not enough. But at any rate, she did not want to work. She was poisoning a little boy. It was all kinds of things. We were going back and forth to court. And what people don't understand with a civil case, because that's what this is, it's a civil case, you keep going back to court and you keep getting continuances. And you're doing that because you're trying to negotiate the case out, right? And so with that being said, we were negotiating, but then they kept fighting. So every time you fight about Lil Johnny having on dirty sneakers or her not sending his clothes back, then I have to file a motion. So that motion has to be heard before we can get to anything else because I filed it, right? So dads tend to get frustrated because they're like, oh my God, no one ever listened to what I said. No, it's not that. So that was the situation that was happening with this particular client. We were right at the end. He was going to get his child. And then he was like, I'm tired. I'm done. And I'm like, you can't be done. We got to keep going. So we did. We kept going. He ended up getting the child. And the little baby is doing good.
That's
he's
awesome.
a young man now. He's doing well. But I've also had it where the judge is like, no, I'm not going to pry this child from his mom. I'm like, you pried him from the dad.
Right.
But here's my philosophy, Brandon. Now, and I always say this because I think, one of those attorneys that I am not going to sugarcoat it for you. I will fight for you, but I am going to tell you the truth. So I always say when the man says they left or whatever, and now I want my kid, why didn't you take your kid with you when you left? Because you can, right? It's your kid just like it's mom's. But usually men pack up and they walk out because they think that's what they have to do. But you have rights. Take your kid with you. Make her fight. But no one does that.
And I think I think it's important too for men to know their rights. I'm going to generalize.
Okay.
Me and you happen to be of a certain hue, right? And I hear and I tell many men you shouldn't sign a birth certificate. Right?
You should have or
should not.
Okay.
That's advice that they get. Why would you say that is good or bad in your opinion?
Well, I think it depends on the situation, right? Like, let's say if dad's like, look, I really don't want this kid. Because that happens. I want her to prove that it's mine. Sign a birth certificate, I guess. If you're married and your wife cheated, you don't have to sign a birth certificate. It's yours. Because there's a presumption.
Right.
But, I mean, here's what I say. Don't make a baby with somebody if you can't be with them the rest of your life. But if you do, you got to raise the kid. Right? You don't get to just walk away and be like, I don't want to. You don't get to say, I want to wear Jordans. I want to go out to Steak 48 and eat. No, you have to help. So while I'm not beating up on moms and I'm not saying dads are the greatest, I'm saying it takes both parties. And we can co-parent. People have to learn how to co-parent. So, because if you don't, the judge will co-parent for you.
Yeah. And I think if you want to elaborate on that point too, is that a lot of times we're fighting with the other partner who gets to make the decision at the end of the day.
It depends,
yeah.
Right? It depends on how your allocation is written. So let me explain what an allocation is. We no longer do custody in Illinois. What we do is called an allocation of parental responsibilities. What that is supposed to do is make sure that both parties are responsible for the upbringing of the children. So what's supposed to happen is both parties are supposed to make those decisions together on schooling, any of that. Well, usually they'll be slick and put something in like, but if mom can't reach dad within 48 hours, mom makes the final decision. But whenever it's time to write that up for a man, they want to give mom, let's give her 7 days, let's give her 5 days, but you only gave dad 2 days. Let's make it same. Let's make it the same. What you do for mom, do for dad. That's it. That's all I want.
And I think that goes to a deeper, even when we started, our name is obviously Fathers Matters. And it was a play on the fact is that a lot of times dads seem to be left out of the equation or they're seen as expendable. And I don't know if that is a product of, I've been wrestling with why that is.
So have I.
Yeah.
I just believe that men have been disregarded. And there's not many men who fight because, one thing I've learned in doing this job is when a man is upset, they know how to they'll scorch the earth, right?
Right. I was saying to walk away. You say no. Yeah, okay.
And especially about their kids.
Yeah.
So I think that in order to keep their sanity, they're like, you know what, let me just back off. Or some men are just like, you know what, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do. And then you'll have women who will say, I don't want anything from you. I just, I'm just going to raise the baby. Well, that's not true. Because when he's 5, he's going to need daycare, right? It might be fine when he's an infant and you're at home holding him. But when he's 5 and he's in daycare, you're going to want money. You got to use dad for more than just a pocketbook.
Right.
Because just like you can babysit or watch your kid during the day, so can dad. Everything you're doing, he can do, except for breastfeed. And if you pump that milk, he's got it.
He can feed them too.
So, I don't understand.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of changing the narrative, some of the things that we definitely through the page, and there are many people who do the work with trying to change laws and that type. That's not how we started. We started primarily as like a daddy and me group, is because there were a group of men. I had my first son at 16, second at 18, right? But that wasn't a unique situation to my friend group. By the time we were 22, majority of us had kids or were creating families, and so we all were involved in our children's lives to the varying degrees, right? And so one of the things that we started to do was to I said, hey, if I'm going to the zoo, come to the zoo with us, right? And that's kind of how we started. But through the movement, one of the things where I used to be judgmental, to your point, is just step up, just do better, just work harder, not realizing that there were all of these other barriers that were, stopping some men from being able to do so. It's because while it wasn't always the greatest relationship, my oldest son's mother, we figured out a way to co-parent in a way that was where we don't have to always agree. We don't even always have to like each other, but we do always have to put the needs of our son first. And so I think that was super important. But I do hear the stories, and so we sympathize, and that's why it was important that we kind of had this conversation. And so we got a couple questions, and then I got a dilemma. So again, this is Fathers Matters. We are live. Share this video. Anybody that shares this video will be entered into a raffle to win a Fathers Matters hat. We will send it to you wherever you are. Super excited for this conversation. And with attorney, and why do I have such a hard time saying amen? Attorney Amen. And so make sure that you guys are tuning in, and we're having an important conversation. She is amongst other things, but one of her areas of practice is family law with a particular emphasis on fathers. And so we are bringing you this video live. And so we're super excited for this conversation. So, now, how do you, for your person, balance the emotionally charged nature of family law with your other areas of practice, right?
I took off a month of work.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah, so why is that important?
So, because you have to have some balance, right? And some work-life balance. And I mean, it's honestly the truth. My criminal defense clients are less work. They are more polite. Family law is very draining. It is, some days you might have to put on your boxing gloves, for real.
Yeah, I get you.
And the attorneys, I think, are the worst, because as a criminal defense attorney, we believe in litigating. Let's go to trial. I don't want to keep arguing with you because I didn't make the baby with you. I wasn't there. So because I wasn't there and it's not my baby, I don't want to fight with you. Let's just go to trial. A lot of family law attorneys don't want to go to trial because litigation is not what they do. They negotiate. So when I go home, I work when I'm at work. But when I go home, I'm off the clock.
Yeah.
And if you need me and it's not an emergency, you'll pay for an hour and a half of my time, even if you called with one question. Because if it's not an emergency, at 8 o'clock at night, I'm doing the same thing you're doing.
Right.
I'm making dinner. Well, not making dinner, but I'm eating dinner. I'm doing the same things you're doing, right? And so it's not appropriate to call me at 8 o'clock at night. It's not appropriate to call me on the weekends if there's no emergency. And so, I always say a bought lesson is better than a taught lesson.
Right.
So when you keep calling on the weekends and then you get that bill that says due immediately, you remember your court date. You don't have to call me on a Saturday.
But I like that, and boundaries, and I think that's important. And even in some of the co-parenting relationships, and I think that's what makes it very, very complicated, is where when you can finalize and you get that court order and everything is spelled out, theoretically, all you have to do is follow that. But it's the in-between of,
Well, Brandon, here's the thing. They don't follow it. So I'm like, I always tell them, this is like your Bible, your Quran, whatever it is you read. This is what this is. Follow it to the letter. They won't. And dads are always guilty of it. Well, she wanted to see if we could switch days. And they always say yes. And then when it's their turn, she always says no. And now you're mad. And now you're back in court again because you're upset. Just follow the order. That's what you paid for. You might not see little Johnny on Christmas Day. You're going to see him on Christmas Eve. And vice versa for her the next year. But just follow the order. And then you won't have any problems.
Boundaries. See, and I don't even know if it's the same thing, but it is, I think, important discipline.
It is.
Yeah, and I think that, and it makes it easier is because oftentimes what we see is when the relationship is good or we're in a good place, now we are able to do things and move things around. Mm-hmm. But next week I didn't do something or just mad or upset.
You went on a date.
Yeah, and now it's, oh, well, you can't see him or the days have to revert. So it is important, you know, how, if you could speak directly to fathers of men or men, what would you say to them in that type of situation? Because you said it's typically the fathers that are the ones that will deviate from the plan.
I would say follow the order. Don't do anything extra. I don't care how nice she is. I don't care how your heartstrings are pulling because your little Johnny baby want to go over and hang out at the wedding that they having. No. Mm-hmm. No. Because when you do, you're causing an issue. And here's the other thing I would tell men and women alike. So the way child support is now set up, you have to have a certain number of overnights. You have to have at least 146 days to see any type of real substantial change in your child support. So let's say I go in, I get you 300 nights, or I get you, 250 nights, right? So that's a significant amount, and you're good. But now you're tired of going to school to pick them up every day. So you start saying to mom, okay, here, you do it. And she does, and then he stays there. Well, you've decreased your nights. And now since you've decreased your nights, guess where we're going again? Back to court for more child support. So the reason I'm giving that analogy is because if you fight for this time and you get it, you don't get the option now to come back and say, I'm tired. I can't do it. No, you have to do it, just like mom had to do it. That's why it's two people.
Now, and so we're gonna switch to challenges before we get to our dilemma. But what systemic changes do you believe are necessary to create more equity in family law?
I believe we need better legislation. Mm-hmm. We need some training on biases and implicit and explicit. And I think men have to accept and know that they have rights and that child or children is just as much theirs as it is mom's. There's so many things I could say. We should, one of the main things is these orders of protection's got to go. But that's something different because it's always, they go into court and say he touched the child. Usually he didn't. And then there's the order of protection. That's a whole nother thing you got to fight, right? So there has to be some type of education for not only judges, but for people, lay people, dads, to understand the importance of fathers. Gone are the days of dads just going out being providers. Mm-hmm. They are parents, and we have to start to look at them as parents.
Yeah, I won't open that can of words, but what you say is but that's sometimes a suggested tactic, right?
It is.
Right? Is
never by me, though.
It's like go put an order of protection, try and show that the person is violent or this, that, and the other. We hear constant stories of that. And have you ever had a situation, I guess, working with a father that really was experienced parental alienation? Because that's something that we hear oftentimes.
My husband, my dad, but most of my clients, that is what is happening, is parental alienation. And I've only had 2 women go to jail for it. When a dad does it, I had a client who called the mom a stanky, B-I-T-C-H. And he said it just like that, you stanky B. They put him in jail for 10 days until he hired me and I was able to get him out. She wouldn't let him see the son. She wouldn't follow any of the court orders. They did nothing. Did nothing. It's amazing to me. And you know who really does nothing? Male judges. It's like they're like,
And you talked about bias training, and do you think what's playing in that situation a role? Many of them you would assume are fathers or have children. So what is it? What does it say that they don't see the value in fathers being involved?
I think, one, they become jaded. Two, they're afraid that if something happens, they're going to be brought up and, they're going to be crucified in the news and things of that nature. So they want to just toe the line. And sometimes you can't toe the line. You have to make a decision. And if you're going to toe the line, you have to think about that child. We had a judge tell us we were too proactive instead of being reactive, and that we focused too much on education. And I thought, the same system that will prosecute them because maybe he did something that he didn't know because he couldn't read is the same system that's telling me it's okay. Don't be proactive. You see the nonsense in that? I'm like, we paid you $6,500 for this. Give me my money back.
Don't be proactive.
Don't be proactive. It depends on, and here's the thing, Brandon. You could get a GAL, you could get a child representative. If they don't like you, they paint a picture of you and you're done. And that's horrible.
And those are the type of stories we hear all the time. Is because it baffled me going through the system. The only part is we were able to agree. So even right now, the only name on certificate, we have a notarized agreement that we have both signed, right? And I know it's not, but we've abided by it. He's 16. We got 2 years left, right?
Okay.
But that's what it was. Is she applied for child support? Me get in there. We here for child support. Well, let's talk about my visitation and my custody rights. Just like, hey, that don't got nothing to do with this. That's a separate thing. Go get this. And I didn't. I was 19, 20. I didn't have no money.
So let me touch on that a little bit. What you just described. A lot of fathers don't know this. There's 2 ways you can get on child support: court or DHS. So that DHS, we don't want that because one, it's an administrative
fee, right?
Well, it's an administrative fee, but it's also an administrative agency, and their rules can be very different, and their calculations could be off. Then they will go in like every 2 years it's supposed to be, but they can keep going in, checking your income, and they can raise your child support or decrease it. So they can modify it either way, up or down. But I always tell my clients, hey, if you know that she is on some type of aid, let's get on child support through the courts. Because that way we have a clear number. Now, we're not doing percentages anymore, but we have a clear number. There is no, I just feel like going back to get a increase. No, we're going to follow the order. So that's one of the things I do want dads to be knowledgeable of. Don't wait until the last minute because they're going to send you this nice letter and it'll be so nice. It'll say, hey, just send me your check stubs. And then dad sends them, and the next thing he knows, his check is being garnished. He's like, why is $800 leaving? Because you sent your check stubs and you didn't hire an attorney.
So you said hire an attorney, but that was the thing. It was the money. And so that's why. But I didn't even understand that they weren't related, is that you could seek money and there still not be any conversation around visitation, how often, time spent. And so there wasn't even correlation between the men that pays out child support. But it's not parental alienation. They just don't, in the eyes of the courts, have a right to said child.
But isn't it parental alienation?
It
is.
Yeah.
Like, I could not imagine who I would be if I didn't have my father. I just could not. He's my biggest cheerleader. He's my, my biggest supporter next to my husband. So I just couldn't imagine not having him around. Like, I definitely would not be who I am now. And my mom is a good lady. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think my dad was probably a better parent. And in my house, my kids will probably say my husband is a better parent. And I'm okay with that.
I think that's important, though, right? Is because even a lot of women, I would say, have to your point is I won't admit that the other parent is stronger or ex-partner or, co-parent is because that reflects negatively on me. And I think as the same way we want to change the stigma around fathers is we have to change the stigma around mothers too, is because a lot of young ladies, and we have them reaching out to Fathers Matters too, are at their wits' end. But, and then when we pose the option, well, have you ever considered?
No, I can't do that.
Can't give custody to the father. That's, that would be insane. But we have that conversation often on the page and in the comments, and we see it and we read those. So to all of those who reach out, again, we can't always help with your specific situation, but we did create the community for us to be able to share, get advice, and bring you more content like this. So hopefully you can get through. It's because we know it's hard and we know it's heavy.
You know what will help everybody get along?
What's that?
So I always say, I'm like, when, let's say, Brandon and Erica breaks up, and then Erica has the kids, Brandon's paying his child support, and he gets to get these kids on the weekend. On the weekends, you don't have to come pick them up. I will. I'm going to be dressed up so good. I'm going to wave at your girlfriend. Hey, girl, take care of these kids. I see you on Monday. Drop them off. Don't drop them off on for Sunday. Keep them till Monday. Because then everybody's getting along. Stepmom, girlfriend, whoever's treating your kids right. Dad's active. And, girl, you going out. You having a good time. Just move around. And then everyone gets to be happy. But the minute you worry about if he took out his girlfriend, there's a problem. That's how it goes.
And we talked about that. We had Brandon Holmes, and I quoted it last week. And I think it may make sense to do it again because I get your opinion on it. But he was given an analogy of essentially just, and I'll summarize, but that his mother, he grew to resent her a little bit is because to her, if his dad had a day, give him the day. If he had a weekend, give him the weekend. And while he understood that may not suffice what it was that she wanted for her child, that would have meant the world to him. And so how do you even deal with that? Where we see that on the page too, where there are men who might not be stepping up to the fullness of what it means to be a father or what we think a great father is. But shouldn't they still have or be able to have a relationship with their child?
Absolutely, because I believe what you just said says it all. It may not work for what mom wants to do, but this child needs some type of relationship. And so while you, mom, may be carrying it around, or your dad may be carrying around, I don't like her or I don't like him, you got to get over it. You don't have to. But at one point, you liked each other so much that you laid down and made a baby.
Right.
You liked each other so much you took your shoes off and made this baby, right? So because that's what you did, you can't now come back and say, well, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to do this. All you're doing is causing a rift, and it always ends up where those children resent mom. It took me a long time because I felt like I missed so much time with my dad. And then I felt like I missed so much time with his family because, of course, if they mad with the dad, you can't see the family either. I'm like, Dad, I can't even see Aunt Kathy. No, you can't see Aunt Kathy. So I felt like I lost a lot of time, and that bothered me. And in my adult life, I did better, and hence why I changed my name to ReneaRose, because it was my grandmother's name. But it never works out the way that they plan. Never.
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 And that's important. And I think to some of the men who are going through that, and we know you just hope like your kids do get older. And as long as you can maintain some type of lines, even what we talked about going back to discussion that we had last week with Dr. Marshall, is there's a longing for us to know that part of ourselves. And typically at some point that child is going to want to know who you are, who you were, and if you don't have that relationship today, possibly, in the future. But I know that's something, especially going into the holidays tomorrow, there are a lot of men who will be waking up and they don't have their children. And so we empathize and sympathize with them and stand with them. So just 2 more questions on our call to action. What would you say to fathers who are hesitant to seek legal representation in custody or family law matters?
Why are they hesitant?
What would you say to fathers who are hesitant?
I would say your child needs you. So whether or not you are hesitant because of what it would do to you, imagine what your absence would do to your child. So your child needs you. It's no longer about you. Your child needs you.
That's important. And how can the community better support fathers and families that are navigating the legal system?
We got to vote, for sure. And we have to know the judges that we're voting for. That's a big thing. Because just because you know the judge doesn't mean that judge shares the same ideology. But also, as a community, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. We have to uplift fathers. We have to be the people to say, look, dads matter. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, like when we were raised up, we had like a village for real. Mm-hmm. We need that again. But what we are running into, and I could go down a whole rabbit hole, so I'm not, what we're running into is that there are so many masculine women that everybody's like, we don't need dads. We don't need those roles anymore. You do. Because if you don't have that, guess what? You will have me later for an attorney in a criminal matter. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we have to do as a community. And I mean, I know moms are carrying a whole lot, especially single moms, but we have to uplift fathers.
Yeah. Now to our dilemma. So this was one of the people who wrote in. I'm a father of 2 young kids, and I'm currently in the middle of a custody battle with my ex. It feels like no matter how hard I fight, the system just isn't designed to work in my favor. As a dad, I provide for my kids. I'm actively involved in their lives, and I want to do everything I can to give them stability, but I feel like I'm constantly being judged unfairly just because I'm the father and not the mother. I've been told to just let it go and settle for whatever time the court decides to give me, but I refuse to accept that. I know my kids need me, so that's going back to what you said, as much as they need their mom. Still, the process is draining emotionally and financially, and I'm starting to feel like I'm running out of options. How do I keep fighting for my rights without burning out? Are there resources or strategies for dads like me to navigate the legal system and show the court that I'm just as capable of being a primary caregiver?
Well, he needs an attorney. Because they're not going to hear you, right? I mean, people go into court and they're like, can I say something? No. And that's what the judge is going to tell you. But if the judge doesn't tell you that, he or she will let you talk, and you're going to say something that's going to mess yourself up. So you have to get an attorney. There are places like Prairie State Legal and North Shore Suburban Legal Clinic, but they mainly represent women. Right? Because they say it's domestic violence, and men can have domestic violence committed against them as well. But with that being said, no, there's not a lot of resources for men, and you will get burnt out. You have to get an attorney. And I know it costs a lot of money, but you have to, or you got to keep going as best you can, but you don't quit.
And so what would you say? So I know a lot of men who've been jaded, and even in the comments, we have a few commentators between the different pages that are saying they don't trust attorneys, right? And that there were tough situations, or the attorneys they felt like were not advocating their interest or too close to the judges. So what would you say in that situation?
So here's what I would say about that. You all have to remember that we're people. So prosecutors, defense attorneys, family law attorneys, opposing counsel, we don't hate each other, right? There might be a couple you'd be like, I can't stand them. But you know what I mean? But we're people, right? So now I'm not going to go out. I don't go to lunch with them and hang out and things like that. But we're people, right? And it's just like anything else. You get more flies with honey than you do with. So if you don't trust an attorney, that's fine. But then you're going to go through this frustration, right? What people tend to do when they hire attorneys is they want to hire the big name. They want to hire the person who's going to showboat in court. But that's not what closes cases. So that's why they're having these bad experiences, because they're going with the people who they believe are, I don't know, more showy, right? More flashy. That doesn't mean you know the law. So now you've paid that person $10,000. Then you come to me to clean it up, and I need 20, and now you're mad because you're out of 30. I'm like, that's not my fault. You have to research the people that you hire. But I can tell you this, even the worst attorney knows more than a layperson, and a judge will listen to them. So even though I get it, you might not trust attorneys. We're not all created the same, but it's a job. We work. I can't look at my opposing counsel and be like, you be, because then that makes me look bad, and it affects your case because the judge sees that. And when people say, well, they're not advocating for me, we don't get to go to court and have verbal diarrhea. Meaning when I go to court, the first day, it's just an appearance. I go back in a couple, maybe 30, 45 days. All I'm saying is, Judge, here's where we are. And we will keep doing that until we negotiate the case. Because here's the thing. If you want a trial, that's fine. But for most attorneys, they charge an hourly rate. My hourly rate is $450, but I charge a flat fee. So that's another additional 10 grand. So yeah, it feels like nothing is happening because I'm trying to negotiate it out to save you some money. But if you want to go to trial, I'm ready. But you got to have the money to go to trial. You need your experts. You need my money. You need to have money for, I don't know, maybe psychologists and psychiatrists for the kids. So that's why it seems like they're not advocating, because you need to have money to make the case move.
And that's the piece that, without getting into all of it, but here in Illinois, Safety Act and this and that's kind of that whole piece is they would rather, proponents of the 50-50 plan would rather it default to 50-50 and then negotiate outside of that versus a lot of men who go in having to fight, and it can be very, very expensive.
I think they should. It should be presumed that each parent gets 50-50, but that's not the law. Now, what we do have right now is the courts in Illinois with the allocation is saying that both parties are responsible. Both parties get to make decisions. Both parties are responsible for child support. But how does that work when the child is with mom the majority of the time?
Or when there's a disagreement, right? So if mom wants to put the kid in a private school, for example, and expect dad to contribute, and dad saying the public school is just fine. So how do the courts typically deem that if they're saying both parents have decision-making authority?
What I always do for my clients is I put in the children will be in public school. If one parent decides that they want them in private school, they will foot the cost. But will every attorney do that? Nope. So then you got to go back to court, and you got to hope that the judge will agree with you. But mainly they're going to say, split it 50-50. Got to have an attorney. Have to.
So that's super important. And with that, we do appreciate you coming on again. This is our collaboration with Fathers Matters, Lake County Media Group, and Lake County Unfiltered. We have Attorney Amen in the house, and she has given us all types of the legal knowledge. And y'all don't get this. Y'all heard her. She said $450 an hour. So
$450 an hour. So,
but like I said, but this is important, and we appreciate her taking the time. Again, she has multiple practices, but one of them is family law with a particular emphasis on fathers and making sure that fathers have their rights. And so with that, how can the people find you, learn more about you? Again, we are broadcasting all over the United States, actually the world. We have people coming in and tuning in live from Africa, Europe, all over. So we're excited for you and appreciate you guys for coming out this evening and listening to us. Share this video. Hopefully it's information that can help you. But where can the people find more about you and a lot of things that you're involved with? So shout them all out. I know you have your own podcast as well.
So my podcast was basically about entrepreneurship because I believe in that. But I am on social media, Facebook. Facebook is just my name, ReneaRose Amen. Instagram and TikTok is BMLG Diva. So it's like Berman Law Group. So BMLG Diva. It's going to be the same on both. And my office is located in Waukegan, but I work in 5 counties. And I do some work in the Southern District of New York, all of the federal courts in Illinois. And I am soon going to be doing business in Nashville.
Nashville,
So,
congrats.
yes,
Yeah,
thank
congrats to you.
Thank you. So I say that to say I am pretty easy to find. You could Google me. I don't know everything you're going to find on there, but hey, but I am always available and love giving back to the community. So I thank you for having me tonight. But yeah. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me. And I give a lot of good advice on TikTok.
100%.
So
if you're not following, make sure you go out there.
Yes.
And after this, we'll make sure that we share that out too
Thank you.
on our Father's Matter. So you guys can make sure that the people that we're bringing on, you guys can big them up. Make sure you're following them for their content. And we appreciate you guys for tuning in with us. Obviously, we're going to make sure that the good attorney leaves with the Father's Matters hat, but you can get yours by sharing this live video, and we'll be picking a winner. We have our winner from last week. They got theirs, and we'll be giving away a second one as well if you want your Father's Matters hat. So with that, we're going to come to a close, but we thank you for joining us for this powerful conversation. This episode was brought to you in collaboration with Lake County Media Group, Fathers Matters, and proudly produced at the True Conglomerate Studios. Together, we're committed to sharing stories that inspire, empower, and create meaningful change. Until next time, stay connected and keep making a difference. Fathers Matters. Shout out to our sponsor, The Community Works. Happy Thanksgiving, and we appreciate you all.
If you're tired of your kids sitting around playing on the phone, playing video games, let me tell you what you could do. You could bring them down to TCW, where they could get life skills, work experience, and have fun at the same time. If you're tired of your kids sitting around playing on the phone, playing video